Hi everyone! I know I'm a bit late with this spooky Halloween tutorial, but I thought I would share it anyway because it actually took me probably a year to collect these little strange shaped bottles together, and I think the bottles that have got a little bit of character to them work well, so at least I'm giving you advance warning. So collect together some unusual shaped bottles and then you need to spray them, and I've used a combination of two things. So I've got my chalkboard paint, which I've sprayed two of my bottles with, and I've also got a sort of mirror finish chrome spray that I've used on the smaller of the three bottles. A little word of warning, no spray paint is good to breathe in, so spray in a well ventilated area and wear a mask. I sprayed outside. I put my bottles in the middle of a sheet and make sure it's not a windy day or you'll wear all your paint spray, and I sprayed 2 to 3 thin coats on clean dry bottles. This is more of an ideas tutorial than a full tutorial because you're likely to have very different bottles to the ones that I've collected, so it's just about the ideas. So this time next year you'll be full of spooky inspiration to make a whole array of potion bottles to put on display with your Halloween decorations next year. So first of all, let's talk labels, and there are plenty out there. So I started off at Pinterest and I've collected together a few links along the way, as you do. And whether you go to a site where you pay for the digital images, or there's plenty of free stuff out there as well, you just want to pick some images that you like, that you think will suit the bottle shapes that you've got, and you need to size them appropriately for your bottle. So I measured some of my bottles and then I scaled the labels accordingly. So first of all, I'm going to work on this bottle here. So I've sprayed it with the chalkboard paint, and now I'm ready to attach my label, which, as you can see, I've sized and cut out, and then it's all about making it look old. Now I went with paper when I printed out my labels because labels on bottles do tend to be paper, so I'm just doing my best to distress them. You have to be a little bit careful even though you do want to distress them because they're paper, and I'm using my scissors to roughen up the edges, and I don't mind if I get a few little tears along the way. I'm also crinkling the labels up, and then I'm using some black soot distress ink just to colour the edges and a little bit to catch the crinkles that I'm putting in by screwing up the label and opening it up again. So I think you'll agree it's starting to look definitely a little bit more aged than when it came off my printer. You could also use some of the dark brown distress inks to do your distressing depending on the colour of your label, but because mine's quite dark I've used black soot, and then I'm attaching it to the bottle. I'm not trying to press out all the wrinkles, and I'm just attaching it to the bottle using some Cosmic Shimmer PVA glue, my favourite glue. Another thing that's quite nice to do is add a couple of little tears, and then just to curl over the edges of the tear as if the label's coming away from the bottle. And you can see once I remove the glue that I'm just flicking up those edges. Obviously they're now white, so I'm going to take my distress ink and I'm just going to colour those back to make them look old. And ignore the green paint because I started to do something then realised I wanted to do something else first. So I'm going to wrap the top of the bottle with some thick twine, and I've just secured the end with a bit of hot glue, and then I'm spiralling it around the top, the neck of the bottle, and you can just do this for as long as you want to around the neck of the bottle, and then you just trim off the end and secure with another dot of hot glue. Now this is one project where the strands of hot glue don't really matter because they look like cobwebs. Now on my desk you can see some old Halloween decorations that I've collected from last year, and they have been proved to be quite useful because of their scale, and I've just removed a couple of the little skulls from the plastic chain and I'm adding them as a decoration tied in a little bit of twine around the top of the bottle, and I'm just adding some glittery green jewels for effect to the eye sockets of the skulls. And as there's a skull on the poison label, I thought I would add a further 2 more little jewels so that they match. Now it's time to go back to that green paint, and I've got some thick lime green paint that was a tester pot, So any old paint will do. I've just got a nice bright colour that I thought would look like poison when I've finished. So I'm literally just trying to create blobs, drips of poison coming down the neck of my bottle using my paintbrush. And when you're happy with the amount of drips that you've got on the neck of your bottle, then you need to put it to one side to dry. It's going to take a little while because of the thickness of the paint. And moving on to potion bottle number 2. And this one again has been sprayed with the matte chalkboard paint, and I think it was an oil bottle that had some herbs in it. I can't really be sure. Like I said, I've been collecting them all year, but I think it lends itself to tying some twine around each of those little bobbles. So I'm just deciding which twine to use, and I think I prefer the one that I was using on the first bottle, so I'm going to go with that. So I'm just wrapping a piece of thread twice around each of the little indentations in the bottle and then tying it in a knot at the front. Then trim the ends and just fray the bits of twine so that the edges of the knots look a bit raggedy. So I'm just trying to line up the knots so that they're all in the same position at the front of the bottle. And one thing that you'll see is that the knots did start to come undone because of the sort of waxy coating on the twine. So I do have to go back in afterwards and add a little bit of hot glue. You could do this as you work now that you've seen what happens to mine. So just fraying those edges. And then giving them a little trim. And then because one of the strings came undone, I'm going back in with my glue gun and just adding a little bit of glue to each of the knots. That should stop them from coming untied, and then obviously retying the one that did come untied. Now I was thinking about how to add the label to this bottle, but I'm going to begin by again wrapping the neck of the bottle with some string. And because this is a vampire's blood, and I'm going to be using some red acrylic paint again to create the drippage at the top of the potion bottle. And for a little bit of glamour on this spooky potion bottle, I add a little bit of glamour dust into the wet paint because I'm pretty sure that there will be magical qualities to this vampire's blood. Now if you have a very strange shaped bottle as I do here, then why not think about making your label into a tag. So I'm just mounting the little label that I printed out onto some black cardstock, creating a tag shape, and then I'm going to tie it again with some string once my paint's dry to the top of my potion bottle. So first of all, a little distressing. So I'm just screwing up my cardboard tag, just a little bit off camera there, sorry about that. And I'm just going to take my scissors to the edge. It's definitely easier to do with a little bit of cardstock, and I'm just going to scuff the edges of the tag. You can see all the paper dust coming off. And then just as I did before on the poison label, I'm just distressing the label before I attach it to the black tag. More little tears and curls and some more black distress ink. So just punching a hole with my crocodile and adding a little bit of twine ready to tie it to the top of the bottle once the vampire's blood is dry. Finally moving on to bottle number 3. So again distressing the label. This time my silver sprayed bottle contains ghostly tears, and so I'm just doing as I did before, adding the distress ink and the crinkles and the tears, and then I'm going to attach it to my bottle. Now everything's looking a little bit too pristine at the moment, and I didn't really want to use string around the top of the bottle again, so here's an alternative. I've just got a piece of gauze that you might use on a wound if you were dressing a wound, and I'm just tattering it up and tying it round the top or the neck of the bottle. And it was at this point that I thought my bottle was looking a little bit too pristine, so I decided to go a whole nother route. I'm not going to keep the silver. I'm going to use the silver as a base for a stone effect. So I'm just attaching another little bit of gauze to the very neck of the bottle. I'm just using my hot glue gun to hold everything in place. And then probably if I'd have thought about doing the paint effect, I would have done this second, but as it happens I want it to look a bit mucky and dirty, so you'll see that I'm going to achieve that as I add the paint to the bottle. I like to pick up little bits and pieces of Halloween decorations because I do like to do Halloween projects, and I bought some skull rings from Asda. As you can see, I'm advertising here on my video, and they were a bit too white and a bit too clean looking, so out with the paint. So I'm just going to use some black and some white acrylic, and I'm going to mix them together and stipple them onto the bottle to create a kind of stone effect, and I'm also going to paint those little skulls. So I'm just using a brush that has got uneven bristles, and that works well. A stippling brush, which I didn't have, but this old paintbrush is going to work equally as well. So I'm just building up a stone texture by adding different shades of grey and just actually mixing the paint on the bottle to create a stone effect. So the silver acts as a good base for this, and then I'm just stippling the other colours on top. I'm also catching the gauze as I work and the skull, as you can see. I just used a little scrub of card as I worked around the label, and as I said before, it was an afterthought to paint the bottle, so probably I would have done this first before I tied anything or stuck anything to the bottle, but it is working fine. So if you end up doing it this way around, it won't really matter, because you want to make the gauze look dirty as well, so that works quite well with the, as you stipple, just to stipple those areas as well. And I'm just painting a little bit of black into the details of the skull. And I wanted to add some cracks to the stone. Now I know that if there were cracks in my bottle, my ghostly tears are likely to escape, but a little bit of artistic license here. I just thought it would look nice. Actually, it could be veins on marble rather than cracks in stone. So I'm just using some watered down black acrylic and a fine brush just to give the indication of some crack marks into the stone. As you can see, I decided my label was all a bit too pristine, so I stippled over it with the paintbrush with just a little bit of paint on the brush, and now I'm just adding the details back in with a white pen. So I think this helps make it look a little bit more aged than it did previously. Now you might have noticed that all of my bottles need stoppers to keep all their goodies fresh inside, ready for next Halloween when I want to cast a spell. So I'm just painting a few more of the skulls, or the fronts of the skull rings, to look like stone. And then I can use them once they're dry to decorate the cork that I'm going to put into this Ghost Tears bottle. So now working on the corks. So I started out with some nice pristine looking corks, and I want them all to look old like the one you see on my craft mat. So I'm starting out with some black soot distress ink, and I'm also picking bits off the top of the cork just to make them look old and battered, well used. And I found that they were still a little bit white, so I'm going to use some brown distress ink. I'm using frayed burlap to take away that new look or new looking colour of the corks, and then it's all about thinking how to design a nice and unusual cork to match your bottles. So I'm going to be using these painted skulls that I made earlier. Wish I'd painted the back and it just so happens they fit nicely around the top of the cork, and I think I'm going to do a matching skull on the top of the poison bottle, and I've got a lovely glittery spider that can sit on top of the vampire's blood bottle. And back out with the paint, I'm just adding a little bit of blood to the tag and a little bit of the glamour dust that I used earlier to make the sparkling vampire's blood. And then now my paint's dry, I can tie this label onto the front of this potion bottle. You can see I added a little bit more blood to the top of the cork of the vampire's blood bottle, and now I'm going back in and painting the backs of the skulls that will show once I've put them onto the cork. Adding some dripping poison to the poison cork. And then once all the paint's dry, it's time to add those final finishing touches. So my sparkly plastic spider, which had a little hook on it which I just snipped off with the scissors, and my glue gun is giving up the ghost, so to speak. So adding a good dollop of glue eventually to the bottom of this spider. I needed 2 hands for this as the glue gun is playing up. There we go. And then I'm going to attach the spooky spider to the top of the bottle to finish it off. And now I think I got a little bit carried away with those final finishing touches because I keep going off camera. So you can see what I'm doing though. I've stuck the 4 skulls around the top of the cork, and then I just added some black stickles for that little bit of glimmer to catch the light on those spooky skulls. And then the last piece is to put the green gems into the skull and attach the skull to finish off the cork for the poison bottle. And here they are finished off. So I hope I've given you some inspiration. They really do look quite fab, especially here next to my fireplace. And the light you can see is actually the video light, so it's actually lighting them up quite well. Although I did add a few candles for effect. So I really enjoyed playing with these bottles. They're well worth having a go, and I'm sure that you can come up with some fantastic designs of your own. So just a few ideas for next Halloween. So depending on when you view this Halloween tutorial, it's either very late or very early, but either way I hope you find some spectacular inspiration from these potion bottles. I had great fun making them. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Looking for some more Halloween inspiration, then check out my Halloween playlist. If not, wait till the end of this video and I've got a couple of links to some spooky projects just for you. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, then don't forget to like it, leave me a comment or share it with your friends on Facebook. And I look forward to sharing some more crafting inspiration with you soon. Thank you for watching.